Intro. Until Dawn, the classic video game about how choices really do matter. You won't be able to change what you do, and that's why it's such a good game. It was really one of the games that pioneered this genre of having the player control how the story goes. It does make it sound really impossible to turn it into a movie for the big screen, and that's what they did. Why wouldn't they, right? Maybe they can make some money off of it because the fan base is gullible. Exploiting fans for everything they have seems to be a pretty popular trend right now. Alright, let's ignore those. This one will surely be the one to make audiences know video games can be adapted to the big screen. Let's make sure they know it's called Until Dawn by seeing it in the trailers as well. Anyways, these two stories are surprise. Two different things entirely. So let's flip a coin to see which one to talk about first. This is what my friend said when I asked him that question. So, we will be talking about the game first. The game takes place in a snowy mountain, specifically in Mount Washington, which is right there in New Hampshire. You walk around the cabin on the mountain in winter and play a prank on Hannah, who is the sister of Beth and Josh. This causes Hannah to overreact, and instead of running to a private room, she runs out of the entire cabin into a snowy environment. Beth follows Hannah into the snowy environment and yells, and is like, "Hannah, please come back," for a while. Walking through the snow for a while and finding Hannah somewhere, a sound can be heard. Let's just say it's a very scary noise, one that makes both Beth and Hannah run and fall down a cliff. This then causes them both to die. Now, considering the game is a decision-based game, I'm going to explain the story I got, since going over every story would probably make this video a lot longer, like a video essay. But after they both die, you cut to 1 year later to the same lodge. But we get to climb up the hill first to get to the lodge, because foreshadowing and all of that stuff. We meet the other characters in the process. Those being Chris and Ashley, who are my personal favorites, I tried to say them. Sam, Mike, and Jessica, and finally Matt and Emily. Seems like a lot to remember, but that is only 7 new people. Easy way to remember it is just couple everyone up together, since in total there's 8 characters, and that's an even number. But everyone makes their way up to the cabin using the cabin car. Should note that Mike is Emily's ex, draw that line, so Matt and him have tension. But after everyone gets to the cabin, Mike and Jessica start to be like, "I desire intercourse." And so they head to the guest cabin that's just way up the hill. This is all while Jessica plays Let Me Go on her phone, which totally wouldn't attract people to where they're going at night. As they head to the guest cabin, Matt and Emily go down to the car to get their stuff and all of that, since Emily, who had decided she left her important bag in the car, had to pull the stunt. Why wouldn't she do this? But then they get scared because there might be something in the woods with them. But who knows? After this, we return to Mike and Jessica at the cabin. They are ready to do what we thought they were going to do. But then a noise can be heard, which freaks Jessica out. Even though they have a literal fire going on. It's just hard, I guess, to be safe here. Jessica then gets mad and goes outside and is like, "Good intercourse, or something along those lines. And then goes back inside. She doesn't close the door, and then she gets attacked by the thing because she just stands there. I don't, know what that thing was, but she just stood there and let it happen. But this causes Mike to chase after her. And this leads Mike to a sanitarium on the mountain, which is somehow even there. Why would it be there entirely? But he finds Jessica just in time, but is separated by the elevator falling. Back to seeing harassment and assault with someone who terrorizes the rest of our cast. Josh, Chris, Ashley, and Sam, who get separated as Sam goes to take a bath, or whatever she has to do in the bathroom. Ashley and Josh then get kidnapped and put in a little device. That device being a torture device, as Chris has to choose between Ashley or Josh. To be honest, at this point in the story, I didn't care too much for Josh, so I picked him to die. Don't know if that would happen either way, but he then gets munched up, it looks like. Sam is chased through the basement and the lower floors of the cabin, requiring a lot of skill checks to be hit. Then you get to the dilemma that Chris and Ashley are tied up in a chair, and you have to shoot one of them. Now, I decided to shoot Chris because I was like, I have to choose one or the other. Now, let's get back to Matt and Emily on their quest down the hill. And the cable car is locked. Magnificent. And there's graffiti on the walls. That's no big deal. But the graffiti is threatening graffiti. That's a big no-no. So, where to go? Maybe a nearby radio tower. That's a good idea. But the only way out is by shimmying around the cable car building. A few skill checks later, and then bam, we're through. Oh, goody. That's what I'd like to see. Then we start to head to the radio tower to try to get contact formed. Eventually, we get to the radio tower and talk with the people who will save us. They say we'll have to survive, get this, until dawn. The game should have ended there. Roll credits. Would have been the game version of cinema, or Kino. But all of a sudden, a creature causes the tower to fall into the mines, which of course means more skill checks. After passing all of those, Emily and Matt do get separated. Let's go back to the other group. Then we see that the masked man is Josh. That's right, Josh is the psychotic guy doing this. Then Mike puts Josh tied up until the police arrive, since he's basically insane, out of his mind. Then we head back to the cabin with the group, which is now Mike, Sam, Chris, and Ashley. Luckily, I got Emily out of the mines, so she does get to see the next part. Now, we get introduced to the second villains of the story. I've been told by someone I shouldn't say the name because of the culture or something similar. So I'll just say Wendigoon instead of the other one. We meet the Wendigoons because the person that took Jessica is one of them. This is because in 1952, the Wendigoons were human, but they had to eat each other because survival is important. This is when we realize that Josh is missing. Oh no, oh that's too bad. Oh, anyways, is what I would have said, but the stranger's like, it's a disease that'll spread. So we have to save him. This is when the stranger gets killed by the Wendigoon after we see that Josh isn't there. In my story, I'm good with skill checks, so I got Chris out. No need to brag. While Chris and the stranger do this, they order everyone else to get to the security room. I think that's what they did. Some random room in the cabin. But during this, I had Emily be bitten as she tried to escape, so she confesses to the group that sadly, she may become a Wendigoon if she doesn't die. I chose not to shoot Emily, personally, in my story, so she gets to live, for now. Mike sets out to find Josh in the sanitarium, which is where we return to see the iconic dog. The first time we visited the sanitarium, we saw the stranger and his dogs, but this time, they sit there because they're loyal. In my storyline, I got the dog to be super friendly towards Mike, so I think I should get bonus points. Moving on, we move through to try to get Josh in the cable key card because he might have it. This is also where we find Sam. I'm pretty sure it's around this area. She's in a jail cell type of room, nothing too big, and she still has her towel on, so she changes into actual clothing because you can't run in towels. After this, we return to the rest of the gang, where they chase after Mike. They need to make sure he's alright, and they realized that separating was a bad idea. Really? Then we walk down the sewers and into the void, we can call it, just following Mike's trails. This is where I sadly made the grave error of checking out the noise, which gets Ashley killed. Now, of course, when I was watching the new Mission Impossible movie with my friend shortly after playing this game, he told me that I could have avoided that even if I'd made the decision. So, knowing that would have actually helped. Now we return to see Josh in the mines. Mike and Sam unite with him, and yay, friendship and stuff, but Josh is kind of having one of those paranoia attacks. Mike and Sam get him out of that, and then we lead him to safety. Luckily, though, I got enough evidence pieces to learn that the main Wendigoon is Hannah, so Josh is able to escape. Whoa, that's another life saved. This is all after Josh imagines the guy we've been seeing in between chapters, Dr. Alan Hill. He's been the psychologist for Josh this whole time. But then we return to Jessica and Matt, since he was able to make it out in my playthrough. She escapes the mines in my playthrough. Magnificent. Now let's look at Mike and Sam as they get to the rest of the survivors. There is just one problem with them. The cabin is full of Wendigos. Now a gas leak is caused by Mike and the others to help get rid of the Wendigos. In my playthrough, personally, when I first got to this part, I thought saving Mike would kill Sam as well. So I didn't save him because there were two options. Leave or save Mike. So it sounded dire. So Sam and Chris are able to escape, but Mike dies in the flames after Sam turns on the lights on her way out. So in the end, I only had Jessica, Chris, Sam, and Matt live. They all go through their various interactions with the police, with Jessica saying she doesn't know how she got into the mines. Matt mourns over Emily's loss. Chris pleads that he didn't kill the old man and it was the Wendigos. Then Sam blames herself for Mike's death and tells the police the crazy stuff in the mines. Well, rather that they should investigate the mines. It's not really anything useful detectives could use. Because imagine you were in the room and asked that question, by the way, not knowing what happened. And you get the response, just look, I wish I could unsee it. Personally, me, I wouldn't take that, and I would leave them in the room until they told me what's in there. I also got both post-credit scenes, since Josh isn't interviewed, but he still made it out. The first one was Josh, where his psychiatrist hopes he finds redemption, but I feel like that won't happen too soon, considering he won't be near anyone. Then, since I saved Sam, I get her post-credit scene where she tries to forget what happened, but she has a scar on her arm. That's symbolic, but then a stranger's voice talks to her, which abruptly ends the scene, and then that's it. I unlocked all the post-credit scenes that were possible and all this stuff, and I got the achievement on Steam for doing one full playthrough of the game. That's the story. So we all know about the butterfly effect, that, by the way, is one of the most recognizable points of this game. The idea that your choices actually matter, and you can't undo them. That's the point of the game when you play it. If you make one choice, your characters can either be alive or, well, 6 feet under, as they say. Clearly, what happened to some characters in my playthrough, Until Dawn, also did make this its main thing, considering the opening scene of the game is the outline of butterfly wings, and how they have many different paths to go on in it. You know, not even subtle foreshadowing, but just gives you an idea of what you're getting into. Like any sane thing would do to get you excited for the product. Now, for the other part of the gameplay that made the game good was also part of how you were playing a movie, essentially. Quick time events, which I referred to as skill checks in the story summary, because let's be honest, kind of the same thing if you've played Dead by Daylight or any games like it. You have to react in time to make sure a character survives or not, but also missing the toddler checks makes the game harder for some characters. This also helps with the auto-saving system because you can't go back once you mess up. I know you would have, because I wanted to sometimes, but you gotta move on. It's too bad if you mess up. The whole point of the game, the first time you play, is not knowing what will happen. And so you have to just kind of hope you do things right. It's instinct based a little bit, kind of like if you were in a forest. Imagine you're in a forest and have to escape. You wouldn't know how to at first. That's also called the thrill, and everyone likes to feel a thrill. That's what roller coasters are for. But, like, ignoring all of that, I guess, now we can talk about the movie. Throwing everything out of the window and everything you know about what made the game great. Now, let's imagine this. Because it's the same universe, because Wendigos are in this one too. Wow, what a way to innovate. Ignore every character in the game and the idea that your choices matter. Let's meet our new characters now, since this is not connected except for by name and one character. Clover, the girl whose sister went missing, is the main character. Of course she is. Then we have Max, who is Clover's ex-boyfriend. Pretty weird to bring him, but whatever, I guess. Nina Riley, who I will just be calling Nina because I could care less about her character's full name. That's Clover's BFF. Then there's Abe, who is Nina's current boyfriend. Then there's Megan, who is Max's stepsister. Whoa, new character. And then there's Clover's missing sister, who they are looking for, Melanie. They're trying to find her so they can retrace her steps. By the way, yes, this is long after she goes missing, so this makes no logical sense at all. Anyways, they go to a gas station where they see Dr. Hill, the only character we actually know, except for the fun fact that he's in a gas station as an employee and not a psychiatrist for now. He says a lot of people go missing on that road, and instead of listening like me and you would have, Clover and her squad decide to follow the road. Surprise, rain forces them into a shelter for a little bit. But little do they know, it's not going to be just for a little bit. So they go into the cabin and check in, since this is totally how any hotel is run. Abe feels like exploring as everyone goes around the building. This is too abandoned as a house. It's just vacant. So they all find a lot of stuff. Let's go down the list. Abe finds a missing poster with Melanie on it, and Nina finds the guest book. By the way, Nina would be a horrible person to go geocaching with. I usually check to see who signs their name in the notepad. Note that she doesn't do this because why would she? Actually, no. Why would she? She's only trying to find a missing poster and is following the steps of Clover's missing sister. No, she just couldn't possibly be here. But then, all of a sudden, in horror movie fashion, they investigate around and they all die. But wait, they're all dead. End of movie? No, just kidding. Time rewinds to when Nina signs the paper for the mansion, but her name is already in the sheet, so she is signing it for a second time in the line below. Wow. So she now knows what's going to happen to her and her friends. Yep, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They know it's the same night as the last night because the hourglass flips over. Whoa. Whoa, guys. This sure is symbolism at its finest. By the way, they all return to where they were when Nina signed her name into the book. But then Megan gets possessed and talks to Clover after she gets possessed. She says some spooky stuff like, survive the night or become a part of it. Then dies, just some ghostly behavior. By the way, don't get attached to Megan at all. She is never used well in this movie. Abe and Nina see a giant monster, and Clover also gets possessed and kills Max. Then she gets run over. Whoa. Now it's just Nina and Abe, right? No. They decide to kill themselves so that the night can start anew and they can save the others. That's what happened, but they realize they're on limited death. The names only appear a certain amount of times in the notebook. The more times their names appear in the notebook, the more they'll turn to the Wendigos. That's not how this works. That's just changing the logic. Literally not how that works. Unless the people in the masks are Wendigos. And guess what? They aren't. So because they're afraid... Because this is a dumb concept. They're afraid of a dumb concept. They can really die at any moment, this story feels like. This can be seen when they go into the bathroom and drink some tap water. Half on their part because they explode because of it. While Clover dies, though, Hill says he's involved with it and mentions Melanie. Clover wakes up in the same night, is like, guys, I will find out what is happening. Okay, buddy, that really will happen. Keep believing in your dreams. Also, Nina has a crash out on Abe because he's tried to abandon them. Honestly, a fair crash out, but she just stabs him. Comically. You see, this is true comedy because she doesn't care for Abe. Do you get it? That's kind of their whole shtick. That Nina needs emotional validation, and Abe's just a temporary solution to that. Good thing it's never fully evolved from that. Don't worry, that's just humor, guys. Don't worry. No, this doesn't kill him. This happens when he and Nina are killed by the masked man when Clover, Max, and Megan are gone. By the way, they get attacked by Wendigos and bam, all of them die. Just a reminder that Megan is indeed a character in this movie. You may forget that sometimes when you're watching. But what you won't forget is what happened before they died. They find Melanie. Whoa. But she's a Wendigo. Okay, guess we gotta restart. Only real thing to do. But now they actually realize how many more nights they have when they find the town mentioned earlier in the movie's origin story. Glore Valley sunk into the ground after a mining incident, which really makes you question how this town was even built. All you need to know from the VHS tapes that they see and watch is that anyone turns into a Wendigoon on the 13th night, and they spend there as their eternal Wendigoon life. Again, not how it works, and never will work like that, because in the game it's from cannibalism and not this. But whatever, I guess, it's a movie. Also, Dr. Hill was supposed to be the therapist to the survivors of it. That's how he was involved. That's a real stretch. Then, while they try to find Dr. Hill, they're killed many times. We see this in the forms of camcorder recordings, and mainly that's it. One of them is the one in the trailer where Clover has something crawl into her face. But also this means that they're on their 13th night. They're all turning into Wendigoons because it's their final night they have. Also, Megan is missing. Yet another way to write Megan out of the story, because she is used as a filler character, I swear. Why would she go through any story instead of being, I'm here with the team, guys, I'm emotional support? But actually, she survived the night, so she got out of there. Now they have to find Dr. Hill, so they look through tunnels to find him. They follow the trails that Megan left behind, and they fight off Wendigoons when they do this. Then the masked man attacks them, so Clover splits off from the group so she can find Dr. Hill. Then she finds her sister. They have a talk like, you remember this girl? And then Clover is forced to kill her. Yep, really symbolic. Then she's at the sanitarium with Megan, who is being experimented on. Dr. Hill comes out and says this, just straightforwardly. He doesn't even beat around a bush or anything, he just says that. He also says that the creatures are also part of Clover's depressions and fears. Again, let's take a look at the lore. And it's nowhere to be found. Magnificent. Thank you, movie, for this. Then Clover sees a drip. Luckily, it's over Hill's desk. It's a dangerous tap water. So Clover makes a few drops of it go into the water because Hill was turned away for so long because, yeah, he's so smart. Hill drinks the water and explodes, which means Clover can grab the key and free Megan. That's what she does, by the way. Everyone else escapes the masked man and is chased by Wendigoons. They go down the tunnel and the hourglass is up. They survived until dawn. Holy crap, they did it. Now that's mainly it as they leave and get out of this freaky place, as they can probably refer it to. Then, in a funky post-credit scene, it shows the actual game's story as it's a snowy cabin on the hill as a car pulls up. Okay, please don't mess this one up. Now, let's look at the source material dilemma this movie really had. How do you even adapt a game like Until Dawn? The answer really is you can't. The whole point of Until Dawn, and all the games like it in that genre, are that it's supposed to be that. A game. You're supposed to be able to play and interact with it. You can't really do that in the form of a movie or something you're watching. And even if you really had to, just because your shareholders told you to, and they said you could have adapted the original story, you should have adapted the original story and not made a new one. Even if it is 10 hours long, you can reduce that to something like 2 hours or 2.5 hours. Now, obviously, that doesn't draw people in like a shorter movie, like this one, but at least you wouldn't be breaking the rules with the original story. But also, the mixed reviews of the movie kind of isn't helping the reputation that video game movies have since, looking at the most recent releases. You can kind of see a downward trend, and audiences not trusting these studios to create a faithful adaptation of the game into these movies. Especially with the Minecraft movie and the Borderlands movie, which were shown before. This also leads to a different issue with trust with studios. But that's a topic really for a different movie. But movies like this certainly don't make audiences trust you more than before. It acts like a filler movie and kind of doesn't improve the lore of the games at all. It made a little profit in the box office, but it doesn't seem to be well received, so it really boils down to, I really want money because my shareholders told me to. But is short-term money really worth it in the long run if you lose your audience's trust over time? That's really the question that movies seem to be going through after reaching what I like to call the breaking point of movies, where people's hype is worn off and they have to rely on the quality of their movies again to get it back. This is what's happening currently in the MCU. Until Dawn should have stayed a game or been named something completely different, because it really is just connected in none but name. Dr. Hill could have been easily replaced, but they probably realized they had to have some way to connect this movie to the game. But it really could have been named anything different and might have been a semi-successful movie if it wasn't attached to this property. The moral of the story is that they just wanted money, and they got a little more than they would have gotten with another name. But will studios learn what they can and can't adapt to the big screen over time? The correct answer is probably no, because they will probably just continue to poorly adapt whatever gives them more money, because they know they have fan bases to these games and these properties. The music of Until Dawn is starkly different between the movie and the game, too. In the game, it's more of an eerie tone because it has the iconic theme. I like the theme of the game way more than the movie, because there's obviously going to be a difference in the way music is made, since these are two different types of media. But the movie's music it's just alright. It's the way you have to fill in the silence that's the problem, because the music in the game is much more action-packed since you are controlling the characters. Sure, you're watching them also, but also you have to be on high alert while you're playing, because a skill check could appear at any moment. This music has to be more intense because you're actively involved. But meanwhile, it was like a lot of movies, especially horror movies, you're kind of just tuning in. You're not playing the movie, but you were seeing what's happening. So the music in the background is more like background sounds and little noises to keep your attention and raise the suspense. Overall, the movie does that part right, like a lot of other movies, but it's nothing really to write home about. It's just kind of average. The game is better, since it feels like music you would hear that helps build atmosphere and feelings. It's more than filler, even though it's the main point. It's just to fill in the silence, but it feels like more than that. And it may be awkward at some parts, but it still does a better job. Especially with the title track, which is called Until Dawn, in both movie and game. They're so different, and it shows where care actually went into. But maybe you'll disagree. I don't know. I wouldn't know. I would say listen to the movie's music and the game's music to see which one you like more. Because music's one of those art forms, I guess, just like all art, where you have to have a valid opinion on it by experiencing it yourself. I can't say how much the Until Dawn game made, since I don't work for the company and I don't know how to find accurate data on all that stuff. I can still give the review scores though, so let's start with those. On IMDb, yes, they review games as well, surprisingly, it has an 8.7 out of 10, and on Metacritic, which is basically Metascore for games, it has a 79 for the original and a 70 for the remake. Honestly, it just makes sense, since a lot of people said the remake was more of a remaster, since it just upgraded the graphics and didn't really change too much to the story. I only played the remake because it was on Steam. I didn't notice any glitches personally, but only the occasional performance issue, but that's most PC versions of modern games now. Now, the movie has a lower score overall, with a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb and a 52% on Rotten Tomatoes. As a 2.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is essentially basically a 5.2 out of 10, so equal to the Rotten Tomatoes score. But it has a weak Metascore because right now it's just a 47. That means it's in the yellow. Overall, it's pretty consistent across the board, so not really anything that stands out. Except for this little review, which, I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of humor, but not really enough to give it this high of a score. I guess Screen Rant really did like this one, or the reviewer didn't play the game. So this is her only experience with Until Dawn. To each their own, really. I mean, everybody can have their own opinions. As for the box office numbers, this movie made $51.5 million off of a $15 million budget. So some profits were probably made. I don't know the marketing costs. We all know how Until Dawn's, the game's cutscenes were made. It was by using motion capture, which involves taking the person's face and body and putting a bunch of sensors, like the little orbs, on them that can be tracked by a computer for their movement. It's used in a lot of modern games with like long cutscenes, like this one. This often just has the people look like what they do in the games, which I didn't know until I saw who played each character. Once you see the actors after the game, it's weird seeing how they translated it from real life to the game because it's like almost 1-to-1. Honestly, it's really cool considering the game is older, so it was probably newer technology back then. As for fun facts about the movie, it was filmed in Budapest, which is in Hungary, I'm pretty sure, for the majority of it, and they had their cast revealed, but not who would play them. Whew. Honestly, not too much trivia, but the gas station they stopped at is named Hartley's, and that is a reference to Chris Hartley from the game. That's one of the main characters. That and the butterfly is secretly everywhere in this movie, in reference to the butterfly effect they could have adapted to the big screen, but they didn't because they couldn't. Now for the big conclusion. Overall, the movie is not an improvement for the game and only does an okay job with what it did. It seems unnecessary to adapt the game into a movie, but I guess that is what money does to a company. The game is much better, and I'd recommend playing it if you have a way to play it, like Steam or PlayStation. So I'm going to rate both of them separately. The movie is okay. It could be better, but I'd give it a 6.7 out of 10, TBH. Now, the game I really enjoyed, but I don't want a sequel because the first one was enough for me personally, and I don't know how they would expand on it. So I would give it a 9.3 out of 10. Now, these may not be your scores, so I always say form your own opinion by experiencing it firsthand. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Pretty please.